So we're going to be joined now by the producer of that 6-part series, Mr. Brian Brennan. What's up, Brian? How you doing, man?
I'm good, man. I'm glad I'm not the CEO at the Coldplay show.
Yeah, you're not kidding. You're not kidding. But just listen to Syl. She's giving advice on how people can get away with it.
Yeah, I heard. I think my wife's watching too. So yeah, don't do that.
All right, so let's talk about this 6-part series you're doing on Dick Allen. So first of all, when is this going to start to air?
So the first one airs tomorrow morning. It's a 6-part series on Sportsnet Central. So first part tomorrow morning, and then all next week, Monday through Friday.
So what made you want to do this? Like, what intrigued you the most about doing this series on Dick Allen?
Yeah, I think first, it was so long ago. I mean, his rookie season was 1964, so you're talking 61 years ago. So I think, unless you're in your late 50s, early 60s, you haven't really seen Dick Allen or weren't there to see it. So I think it's just sort of telling the story and the times he came up in. He basically had to be the Phillies' Jackie Robinson, gets a big bonus from them in 1960, and then 1963 gets sent to Little Rock, Arkansas to integrate the team down there. That's where the Phillies AAA team had moved, and obviously that was not something he really wanted to do. But just coming up in those life and times and the things that he had to deal with that he really wanted no part of, but you don't get to choose the era in which you play and the times you come up in, and having to come up in that era of racial upheaval both around the country and in Philadelphia, and how he dealt with that because he was not one to turn the other cheek, let's say.
Brian, Dick Allen was obviously a tremendous player, but the timing was a bit off, right? I mean, he wasn't surrounded with the best power hitters relative to, in Phillies history. How do you think he was able to forge past that?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, he had Johnny Callison when he first came up. Johnny Callison was still an all-star, a really great player. But, he didn't have the teammates around him that Ryan Howard had, that Mike Schmidt had, the other great power hitters in Phillies history. So, I think he was just an incredible hitter from 64 to 74. The only player that had an OPS better than him was Hank Aaron. So that kind of gives you an idea. We're talking an era with Willie Mays and Clemente and all kinds of guys like that. And he was second best in baseball. So he still put up his numbers. But the team, after the collapse in 64, even though he played great down the stretch, that was the best Phillies team he would play on until he came back in the mid-'70s. So he just, unfortunately, they had a Hall of Fame pitcher in Jim Bunning. They had Callison, but they didn't have a lot of other great players. The team around him was not nearly good enough, especially in an era before expanded playoffs.
So Brian, you said he's the Phillies' Jackie Robinson. It took 16 years from when Jackie Robinson first enters into Major League Baseball before the Phillies had a black player?
Yeah, so he's not the first black player they had. A guy named John Kennedy got a cup of coffee in 1957. By 1960, you have Tony Taylor, a couple regulars, but he's certainly the first black superstar and the first one that had to deal with the brunt of taking on all the media criticism and that kind of thing. His rookie year is super interesting because he leads the National League in runs, in total bases. He also leads it in strikeouts and errors. He made 41 errors at third base, a position he didn't play coming up in the minor leagues at all, but they needed a third baseman. They needed a right-handed bat, so square peg, round hole, they just kind of jammed him in there, and he just wasn't a very good third baseman. So as great as he was in some areas, he wasn't great in other areas, and a lot of those kind of, were highlighted by the fan base.
All right, Brian, take us through it. So the 6-part series, Long Road to Cooperstown, it premieres tomorrow morning on Sportsnet Central. When did the filming for this series begin?
We started doing interviews like 2-3 months ago. We're super fortunate to get 2 archival interviews with Dick Allen. He's obviously no longer with us, but we got one that he did on Prism in 1991, another one he did with a company called History Making Productions in 2012, and they were super generous to us to let us have that. So he gets to tell his own story a lot of the way through here. And we've been doing interviews, obviously, for a couple months leading up. So we talked to his son. We talked to Ferguson Jenkins. We were super fortunate when he was in town. He was Dick Allen's teammate in Little Rock, Arkansas in 1963. So one of the very few people left that can speak to what that experience was like. So as fully as we can, we want to tell his story and everything that he went through on his path to Cooperstown, which came, obviously, the call to Cooperstown came way too late.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, man, really. So tomorrow morning, what time Sportsnet Central tomorrow? 6 a.m.?
6 a.m. to 10, yep.
6 a.m. to 10 a.m. you could hear it. Now, what some may not know about Brian, in addition to being the producer of this 6-part series, You also do some Sixers games, right?
Yeah, I produce the Sixers pre- and post-game shows. Yep, been doing it for the entire Embiid era, pretty much. Yep.
So I know you're here to talk about this 6-part series on Dick Allen, but I'd be remiss if I did not ask you if you had an opportunity to read this long ESPN piece on Joel Embiid.
I sure did, of course.
What's your biggest takeaways, man?
I mean, my biggest takeaways are just, getting that insight into kind of who he is as a person. The stuff you don't usually get to find out, leaving the money out to see if somebody will take it, that kind of stuff. Just how guarded he is as a person, which you can kind of tell some of that by the way they release his medical information and stuff like that, that he's certainly very guarded, doesn't let a lot of people in. But the extent to which that is true is pretty crazy. But I think when you're in his position, sort of any professional athlete, I think everybody you meet, you just assume they want something from you as opposed to just wanting to get to know you for you.
Yeah, it can't be easy. It can't be easy. Well, I'm looking forward to this Dick Allen documentary, and as we're talking, my dad just texted me. I want to see if this is accurate.
Okay.
He says there is a mural of Dick Allen at Broad and Rittner in South Philadelphia.
There absolutely is. You'll see it in the documentary.
How about that?
Nice.
Yeah. So Bill Sr. knows his stuff.
Yes, he does. Go Bill Sr.
He also says that Dick Allen was called Richie Allen. I remember that. I knew that one.
Yeah.
Yes. And then
he didn't love that, but yeah, he was, in the 60s in his first stint in Philadelphia, he was definitely known as Richie for sure. And all the kids that grew up loving him, they grew up loving Richie Allen, and it's just funny how it came full circle when he comes back in the 70s. The boos turned to cheers, and those kids that called him Richie, now call him Dick Allen, and they're rooting for him when he comes back in the mid 70s.
Yeah, really cool story, man. I'm looking forward to watching it tomorrow, 6 a.m., and it will about be 6 straight days. Are they doing it?
So we don't have the show on the weekend. So Friday and then all next week, Monday through Friday.
Awesome. And he's inducted on Sunday.
The following Sunday, yep.
The following
a week from
Sunday. Perfect. So this will be tomorrow and then all week next week leading into when he gets inducted in the Baseball Hall of Fame. Really cool stuff, Brian. We appreciate you joining the show, man.
All right, Bill. Appreciate it. Thank you for having me.